In the heart of ancient Jewish tradition lies a mystery that challenges everything we thought we knew about the Messiah. For centuries, the world has revered the image of a singular, triumphant Redeemer, a king from the line of David who would restore Israel's glory. But what if this was only half the story? Hidden in the ancient texts of the Talmud, the Zohar, and apocalyptic writings is a prophecy not of one, but two messiahs. One, the conquering Messiah ben David, is celebrated. The other, Messiah ben Joseph, is a figure cloaked in shadow, destined to suffer, fight, and die in a cosmic sacrifice. His story, long buried, shakes the foundations of both Judaism and Christianity. Who was this forgotten Messiah? Why was his name erased from history, and could he have walked the earth long before Jesus of Nazareth? Join us as we uncover the secret origins of Messiah ben Joseph, the warrior whose death was meant to change the world. Let's journey back to the Second Temple period, roughly 500 BCE to 70 CE, a time of turmoil for the Jewish people. Under Persian, then Greek, and later Roman rule, Judea was a land of priestly tensions, political upheaval, and fervent apocalyptic hopes. The Jewish people yearned for redemption, a divine figure to liberate them from oppression, but ancient texts reveal a surprising belief. Redemption would not come through one Messiah, but two. Messiah ben David, the kingly redeemer from the house of David, was to bring peace and glory. Messiah ben Joseph, from the tribe of Ephraim, was destined for a darker role, a warrior who would lead Israel into battle only to fall as a sacred sacrifice. This dual Messiah doctrine wasn't a fringe idea. Prominent rabbis, like Saadia Gaon in the 9th century and Nachmanides in the 13th century, treated it as a legitimate tradition. The Talmud, in Sukkah 57a, speaks of ben Joseph's death in battle against Gog and Magog, a mythic war signaling the end of days. The Zohar, a cornerstone of Jewish mysticism, describes him as a mystical bridge between darkness and redemption, his death atoning for Israel's sins. These texts paint a vivid picture. Ben Joseph was no failure. His suffering was a requirement, a divine act to prepare the way for Ben David's triumph. But why has this prophecy faded from view? To understand, we must explore the cultural and political forces that shaped ancient Judaism. The idea of a suffering Messiah didn't emerge in a vacuum. Its roots stretch back to the Hebrew Bible, particularly the servant songs of Isaiah, written around the 6th century BCE. Isaiah 53 speaks of a figure despised and rejected, pierced for our transgressions. While modern Judaism often interprets this collectively, as the nation of Israel, early Jewish interpreters saw an individual, a Messiah who would suffer. Zechariah 12:10, written around 520 BCE, describes a pierced figure mourned by the nation, a prophecy ancient rabbis linked to ben Joseph. Daniel 9, from the 2nd century BCE, hints at an anointed one cut off before victory. Even the Book of Enoch, a text from the Second Temple period, portrays a pre-Redeemer steeped in sorrow and sacrifice. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in Qumran in 1947, we find further clues. Texts like the Rule of the Community and Testimonia, dating to the 2nd century BCE, describe two messianic figures, one priestly, one royal. While not explicitly named Ben Joseph, the framework aligns, a suffering figure paving the way for a triumphant one. This multi-staged redemption was central to the Qumran sect's apocalyptic worldview. The cultural context was clear. In a world of oppression, the Jewish people expected a Messiah who would first endure judgment and sacrifice before glory could dawn. Ben Joseph's story was etched into the very blueprint of Jewish redemption, drawn in blood long before the idea of a singular Messiah took hold. At the heart of Ben Joseph's prophecy lies a cataclysmic event, the battle against Gog and Magog. In Jewish eschatology, this apocalyptic war, described in Ezekiel 38:39, marks the end of days. It's a clash of chaos and order, where the forces of evil threaten to engulf the world. According to the Talmud and other texts, Ben Joseph's mission was to lead Israel's armies into this battle. His role was not to win, but to die. His death, far from a defeat, was a sacred act of atonement, akin to the scapegoat rituals of Yom Kippur, where a sacrifice cleansed the people's sins. The Zohar suggests his death absorbed divine judgment, clearing the spiritual path for Ben David's reign. This wasn't just theology, it reflected the political realities of the time. During the Second Temple period, Judea faced constant threats from empires like Rome. Messianic hopes often fueled rebellions as the Jewish people sought divine intervention against their oppressors. Ben Joseph's prophesied death resonated with a people familiar with loss and sacrifice. But why was his story suppressed? The answer lies in the political and theological crises that followed one of history's most devastating rebellions. In 132 CE, a charismatic leader named Simon bar Kokhba rose to prominence. Declared the Messiah by Rabbi Akiva, one of the most respected sages of the era, Bar Kokhba united the Jewish people in a revolt against Roman rule. He reclaimed Jerusalem, minted coins in his name, and for a fleeting moment it seemed redemption had arrived. But Rome's retaliation was brutal. By 135 CE, the revolt was crushed. Bar Kokhba was killed, Jerusalem lay in ruins, and thousands perished. The defeat was catastrophic, not just politically but prophetically. For some, Bar Kokhba's failure disqualified him as the Messiah. But for those familiar with the Ben Joseph prophecy, his death fit the pattern perfectly. A warrior Messiah who fought and fell, preparing the way for redemption. Could Bar Kokhba have been Ben Joseph? The Talmud doesn't say when Ben Joseph would appear, only that he must die. Other candidates emerge. Ananias III, a high priest murdered in the 2nd century BCE, whose death shook the temple system, or Joshua ben Nun, the biblical leader from Ephraim who led Israel into the Promised Land without ruling it. Yet no single figure definitively claims the title. Perhaps Ben Joseph was never meant to shine. His destiny was silence, his impact felt only after his death. The Bar Kokhba revolt marked a turning point. The crushing defeat forced Jewish leaders to rethink messianic expectations. The two-Messiah doctrine, with its emphasis on a suffering figure, began to feel dangerous. It mirrored the emerging Christian narrative of a crucified Redeemer, creating theological confusion. Early Christianity, born from Jewish roots, absorbed the Ben Joseph archetype. Texts like Isaiah 53 and Zechariah 12, once linked to Ben Joseph, were reinterpreted to describe Jesus, who became both the suffering servant and the triumphant king. By merging the two messiahs into one, Christianity simplified the narrative, but at a cost. To protect Jewish identity, rabbis downplayed Ben Joseph's role. Some treated him as symbolic, others left references vague or abandoned them entirely. The idea of a suffering Messiah became politically charged, too close to Christian claims. By the time of the Talmud's compilation in the 5th century CE, Ben Joseph was relegated to the shadows of Kabbalah and Midrash. Meanwhile, Christianity's rise cemented the single Messiah model, erasing the distinct Jewish expectation of two figures. But traces of Ben Joseph lingered in apocryphal texts like the Ascension of Isaiah and the Apocalypse of Peter, where suffering messianic figures echo his blueprint. The story of Messiah Ben Joseph raises profound questions. Was he a historical figure, a martyr, priest, or rebel whose sacrifice was forgotten? Or is he a prophetic symbol, awaiting fulfillment in the end times? His legacy challenges both Judaism and Christianity to confront the complexity of redemption. For Judaism, it recalls a time when suffering was seen as a sacred step toward salvation. For Christianity, it suggests that Jesus' role as the suffering servant may owe more to Jewish tradition than previously acknowledged. The suppression of Ben Joseph reflects the cultural and political struggles of a people caught between empires and ideologies. Yet his story endures in the margins, in the Talmud's mourning, the Zohar's mysticism, and the whispers of early Christian sects. Economically and socially, the expectation of a suffering Messiah shaped Jewish resilience, offering hope amid exile and loss. Technologically, the preservation of these ideas in texts like the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Talmud ensured their survival, even as oral traditions faded. As we stand at the crossroads of history and prophecy, the story of Messiah ben Joseph invites us to question what we've been told. What if redemption begins not in glory, but in sacrifice? What if the forgotten figures of history, those who fought, suffered, and died, were part of a divine plan we're only beginning to understand? Ben Joseph, the shadow Messiah, reminds us that truth often lies in the margins, waiting to be rediscovered. His story challenges us to look beyond the triumphant narratives and honor the silent sacrifices that shape our world. As we close this chapter, one question lingers. If Ben Joseph walked among us, would we recognize him? Or would he, like his prophecy, remain hidden in plain sight?